In December of 2002, a young woman named Laci Peterson vanished from her home in Modesto, California. She was 8 months pregnant. Her husband said she went out to walk the dog, but that dog came back. Laci didn't. At first, the story looked painfully familiar: a missing person, a grieving family, and a husband doing interviews begging for help. But behind the scenes, something wasn't right. Most people think they know how this ends. A cheating husband, a tragic murder, justice served, case closed. But what if I told you? There's a moment in this story, a phone call caught on tape, that flips everything upside down. It's a detail so subtle, most people missed it, but it changes everything. Today we're going to walk step by step through the twists, the deception, and the moment the entire country realized the man smiling on TV might be hiding the darkest secret of all. This is not just the story of a murder. This is the unraveling of a perfect lie. On the surface, Laci Peterson's life looked like something out of a holiday commercial. It's December 2002. In the quiet, tree-lined neighborhoods of Modesto, California, a young couple is preparing for Christmas. Their cozy one-story home is wrapped in warm lights. A wreath hangs on the front door, and inside, a nursery waits, painted soft blue, complete with a crib and stuffed animals. It's a room meant for joy, for a new beginning. Laci, 27, is glowing, 8 months pregnant with her first child, a boy she plans to name Connor. Her friends describe her as magnetic, cheerful, and full of life. She's the type of person who smiles at strangers in the grocery store and sends thank you cards for small things. A former ornamental horticulture major, she's left her job to focus on motherhood. Scott, her husband, runs a fertilizer sales business and seems to adore her. To the outside world, they're the perfect couple, the kind you'd see on a Christmas card. This wasn't just the American dream, it was their dream, built piece by piece with patience and love. But in just 24 hours, that dream would unravel, and the world would learn some smiles can hide terrifying secrets. December 24th, 2002. Laci wakes up early. She's planning a peaceful day. Bake cookies, walk the dog, get ready for dinner with her family that evening. It's her last Christmas before motherhood, and she wants everything to be perfect. Scott tells police that he left the house around 9:30 that morning. He said he was going to his warehouse, then planned to go fishing, alone, at the Barkley Marina, about 90 miles away. When he returns later that day, he says the house is empty, no sign of Laci. The dog is in the backyard, leash still attached. Her car is in the driveway, but Laci is just gone. At 5:17 p.m., her stepfather calls 911. That night, the lights on the Petersons' Christmas tree blink softly. The nursery remains untouched, but outside, search parties begin combing the neighborhood with flashlights. Flyers are printed. Volunteers pour in. The story spreads fast. A radiant, pregnant woman missing without a trace on Christmas Eve. And Scott? He appears on camera the next day, calm, measured. He thanks the public for their help and asks for prayers. But people notice something unusual. He's not crying, he's not searching. There's something about him, too rehearsed, too distant. As the hours turn into days, whispers begin. Friends of Laci say she would never just leave. She was excited about the baby, obsessed with becoming a mother. The police quietly agree. And then there's the dog, found wandering near the house. If Laci had walked him that morning, wouldn't someone, anyone, have seen her? But no one did. The perfect family had cracked. But what no one knew yet was that the first lie had already been told. As police retraced Laci's final steps, one question kept surfacing. Why would a man go fishing alone on Christmas Eve while his 8 months pregnant wife baked cookies at home? Scott Peterson had offered up his alibi quickly, almost too quickly. He said he went to his warehouse to check emails, then drove to the Barkley Marina to test out a new fishing boat. But that location, it would become a chilling centerpiece later, because at the time, it just didn't make sense. Investigators dug deeper, and the more they examined, the more things didn't add up. Security cameras at the marina confirmed Scott's presence, yes, but not much else. There was no proof he actually fished. No bait, no fish, no gear, just an empty boat ride on a frigid bay, on Christmas Eve, alone. He told police he was distraught, that he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. But within hours of Laci's disappearance, he refused a polygraph. Then he stopped doing interviews. Then he lawyered up. The public, once sympathetic, began to turn. But the real rupture came with one phone call. A woman named Amber Frey had seen Scott on the news and froze. She wasn't just someone who knew Scott Peterson, she was dating him. Amber had met Scott just a month earlier. He told her he was single, no wife, no child on the way, just a man looking for love. So on December 30th, 6 days after Laci vanished, Amber walked into a police station and made a stunning confession. "I think the man I'm seeing might be involved in that missing woman case." From that point on, she became more than a witness. She became part of the investigation. She agreed to let police record her phone calls with Scott. And what Scott didn't know was that his carefully built mask was already starting to slip. In public, he was the grieving husband. In private, he was planning New Year's Eve dates with another woman. The world saw a man losing his wife, but Amber saw something else entirely. Then one call changed everything. It was New Year's Eve, just 1 week after Laci vanished. Scott called Amber Frey again, unaware their conversation was being recorded by police. His voice was calm, almost cheerful. He told her he was in Paris, watching fireworks outside the Eiffel Tower. A complete lie. In reality, he was in Modesto, at a candlelight vigil for his missing wife. But then came the moment that made even seasoned detectives go cold. "This is going to be my first Christmas without her." Amber went silent. There was only one problem with that statement. Laci wasn't confirmed dead. In fact, she was still listed as a missing person. And Scott? He had just confessed to mourning a death the public didn't even know had happened. To investigators, it wasn't just a suspicious comment. It was a slip, a window into Scott's mind. It was as if he'd already buried his wife in his head and was starting a new chapter without her. Amber stayed calm on the call, but once it ended, she sat with detectives and replayed the audio, again and again. Scott was unraveling. His carefully maintained story, the fishing trip, the public grief, the TV interviews, it all began to look like a performance. And this one phone call, it was the crack that started it all. Soon the world would hear it too. And when the truth finally came out, it would shake the nation. 4 long months had passed since Laci Peterson vanished without a trace. The case had gone cold. No eyewitnesses, no murder weapon, and no body. Just theories, suspicions, and a grieving family that refused to give up hope. Then, on April 13, 2003, something finally surfaced. A couple was out walking their dog along the edge of the San Francisco Bay, near Richmond, California, not far from where Scott said he went fishing on Christmas Eve. The dog began sniffing at something caught in the rocks. At first, the couple thought it was some kind of strange sea animal, but as they got closer, their stomachs dropped. It was the partial remains of a baby boy. The umbilical cord was still attached. The limbs were mostly intact, but the rest had been ravaged by time and water. Less than 24 hours later, just a mile away, another discovery was made. This time, it was the body of a woman. Her head, arms, and most of her legs were missing. But what remained matched Laci Peterson's description, including the maternity clothes she had last been seen wearing. It was a gruesome sight, and yet, it answered the question that had haunted everyone for months. An autopsy confirmed the worst. It was Laci and her unborn son, Connor. The bodies had drifted for months, slowly making their way back to shore. The very place Scott claimed to be fishing is where Laci was found. It was as if the bay itself had been holding a secret, until it couldn't anymore. And now, with the bodies recovered, the noose around Scott's neck was beginning to tighten. Just days after Laci's and Connor's remains were discovered, everything changed. On April 18, 2003, authorities were ready to arrest Scott Peterson. But when they arrived at his home, they found nothing. Scott was gone. For a few tense hours, they feared he had fled the country. But then they tracked his phone and found him in La Jolla, near the Mexican border, over 400 miles away from Modesto. And he didn't look like Scott anymore. His dark hair was bleached to a patchy orange blonde. His car was loaded with over $15,000 in cash, camping equipment including knives and a stove, multiple cell phones, a shovel, and most bizarre of all, his brother's driver's license. When asked what he was doing, Scott said he was just going to play a round of golf, but it didn't look like a golf trip. It looked like a getaway. Authorities believed he was trying to flee to Mexico, maybe even disappear for good. But he was caught just in time. By then, his behavior had raised every red flag. No longer just a cheating husband. Now he looked like a man who was desperate, cornered, and guilty. The media exploded. A husband once seen as a victim of tragedy was now painted as a cold, calculated killer trying to outrun the law. And so, on that spring day in April, Scott Peterson was arrested for the murder of his wife and unborn son. The chase was over, but the real battle, the courtroom war that would divide America, was just about to begin. By the time Scott Peterson stood trial in June 2004, the nation was hooked. Cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom, but that didn't matter. The media frenzy was unstoppable. People lined up overnight just to get a seat inside. Outside, protesters held signs calling Scott a monster. Others argued he was being tried by public opinion, not facts. The prosecution came in swinging. They had no murder weapon, no exact time of death, and no witnesses. But they didn't need them. Their story was chilling. Scott didn't want to be a family man. He wanted a new life, free of responsibility, and free of Laci. So they claimed he killed her, dumped her body in the bay on Christmas Eve, and then lied about it for months. Their biggest weapon? Amber Frey, the woman Scott had been secretly dating while his wife was 8 months pregnant. Amber took the stand and testified against him, even playing recorded phone calls where Scott pretended to be in Paris on New Year's Eve, while in reality he was attending a vigil for Laci. The courtroom was silent when those tapes played. You could almost feel the oxygen leave the room. The defense argued it was all circumstantial. They said the media twisted everything, and that Scott's lies were those of a scared, embarrassed man, not a killer. But the evidence kept stacking. The fishing trip to the exact location where the bodies washed up, the affair, the bleach in the house, the dyed hair, the cash and camping gear. Piece by piece, the picture was forming. And after 5 long months in court, the jury was ready to decide. It was November 12, 2004, nearly 2 years since Laci vanished. The jury filed back into the courtroom. The room was packed, tense, silent. Even Scott looked nervous, something rare for him. The judge asked for the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant Scott Lee Peterson guilty of the murder of Laci Peterson, guilty of first-degree murder for Laci, second-degree murder for their unborn son, Connor. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Outside, people cried, some in relief, others in shock. Scott showed no emotion, just sat there, silent. But the trial wasn't over yet. The same jury would now decide his fate, life in prison or death. Weeks later, they returned. Scott Peterson was sentenced to death. He was sent to San Quentin State Prison, placed on death row, but California hadn't executed anyone in years, so Scott sat and waited. Even now, he maintains his innocence. In 2020, parts of his conviction were reviewed. His death sentence was overturned, but the guilty verdict still stands. To this day, some people still believe he didn't do it, that maybe someone else abducted Laci, that the trial was unfair. But for Laci's family, the truth is simple. Laci and Connor are gone, and Scott Peterson will never walk free. It was a case that captivated a nation, not because it was complicated, but because it hit so close to home. A beautiful young mother, a charming husband, a baby on the way. And then, everything shattered, because sometimes the perfect life is just a mask, and behind it, something terrifying waits to be uncovered. As the case drew to a close, investigators began piecing together a chilling image, the Petersons' nursery. It had been carefully decorated, lovingly prepared, with every detail meant to welcome the new life that would soon join their family. The crib, still pristine, the soft toys waiting to be played with, and the baby clothes hanging in the closet, all untouched and unspoiled. But the house was now empty. Laci was gone, and the nursery was left to gather dust, a painful reminder of what was supposed to be, but never would be. And in the quiet of that empty room, one thought lingered in the air. She thought she was building a family. He was planning their end. That simple, heart-wrenching truth echoed through the silence. A perfect family, shattered by a perfect lie. The haunting question remains. If Scott Peterson hadn't cheated, would Laci still be alive? Could the course of her life and death have been different if her husband had stayed true? If the perfect image of their family hadn't been built on such fragile, deceptive ground? It's a question that still gnaws at the heart of this case, and it's one that might never be answered, at least not to our satisfaction. What is even more chilling, though, is this. Evil can wear a perfect smile. It can blend seamlessly into the fabric of normalcy, looking just like you or me. And sometimes, it's the person closest to us, the one we trust the most, who holds the darkest secrets. Laci Peterson was a woman who dreamed of a bright future, of a family she could nurture and protect. But in the end, it was a smile that betrayed her, a smile that concealed the darkness lurking beneath. And now, all that's left is the hollow ache of that betrayal, the ache that nothing can heal. As the nursery door swings shut, the final haunting thought lingers. How could she not have seen it coming? They called her the perfect wife, and for a while it looked like she had the perfect life. But Laci Peterson's story shattered that illusion, not just for her family or the people of Modesto, but for the entire country. Because what unraveled after her disappearance wasn't just a criminal investigation, it was a disturbing mirror, showing us how easily a picture-perfect life can hide something far more sinister. At the start of this story, we asked what really happened to Laci. By now we know the facts, or at least the version the court accepted. But beneath the evidence, the timelines and the headlines, there's still a chilling uncertainty. Not about who was convicted, but about how someone could live a double life so convincingly, until it was too late. This case didn't just grip the media. It shook people to their core because it revealed a quiet, terrifying truth. Sometimes, the danger isn't outside, it's already home. So tonight, if Laci's story has stayed with you, let it be more than just another headline. Let it be a reminder of how important it is to listen, to question, and to never assume that a smile tells the whole story. If this story moved you, subscribe, share, and speak her name. Not for the views, but for the voice that Laci no longer has. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and never stop seeking the truth. I'm Derek, and I'll be back soon with another investigation.